We work with people who are interested in significant systemic change. And both Tuesday and I have been working independently for many years. Both of us have been about 20 years in this kind of line of work. And in the last couple of years, it's got to the point where the scale of the projects is so large and the complexity of them is so big that we've had to team up and build a team around us of professionals who can go in and support places to do the work. What we don't ever want to become is a large studio. Our interest is not in the people we work with becoming dependent on us. Our interest is being a small team that can work with groups of people and build their capacity to solve their own problems, right? That's essentially how we work. So that kind of summarizes our relationship, I think, really effectively. Where I make like really big, bold statements, and Tuesday's like, yeah, well, and then there's this.
Exactly.
And bluntly, you know, as you can see, we work across a lot of difference in our relationship and in our friendship, right? We work across race, we work across gender, we work across nationality and language and class. Right, these are all things that we're navigating in how we work with each other that enable us to bring those kind of questions to the tables we're working with and the people we're working with over time. And the bottom line here for us is that we are seeking systemic impact. Right, that's what we're interested in. We're not interested in putting in place a better program.
That's right.
We cannot program our way out of the challenges that we're faced with. We actually need to revisit the systems we have in place and begin to shift them so they start fitting the reality of the world we live in.
And have equity at the center, right?
Well,
so we're not interested at all in just doing change for change's sake. We actually know that we want to be talking about redistribution of power and wealth and really digging into difference. Equity at the center of systems change is what we do.
Because otherwise it doesn't work. If you aren't dealing with issues of equity, you're probably perpetuating the status quo, even though you think you're making lots of change. Right? And so that last slide that we just skipped right past was just like we work in lots of places, from the European Union to Denmark to like all kinds of places, but the bottom line is these people are faced with significant uncertainty. They're faced with circumstances that are beyond their control. In Sweden, they're dealing with the largest immigration in their history in the last 5 years. Right? And that is completely transforming their municipal government structures, and it's completely transforming their welfare systems. And we're working with them on that. We're working in Malmö, which has a 30% child poverty rate. Right? So this stuff's for real. No one's in this because it's a nice idea.
Right.
People are in this because there's real need and there's work to be done, the same as you.
Right. We don't ever work with people who know what to do. Just to be really clear, if
Yeah.
you know what to do, go do it. Right? But the issues that we're facing right now, we actually don't know what to do around.
Or people who want to make reports.
That's right.
We don't work with them either.
That's right. So what we've learned in these 20 years of systemic change is there are 3 things we need to change. If we want to transform our systems, there are 3 kind of areas of change we need to work on. We need to change the way we are engaging others, the way we are looking out, the way we're bringing people in. We need to change that. We also need to change the way we engage each other. Right? Our relationships with each other matter as well, and we need to change the way we actually engage ourselves. Our personal leadership in this matters. So those are the 3 categories we're going to talk today about. All right, so when we talk about changing the way we engage others, we want to engage people who are impacted by the issue. If I could tell you how many rooms I walk in and people are like, oh, it's these folks and these folks and these folks, and they never come to our meetings. We don't know how to get to them. What I would say is, if you run an engagement or a meeting, that the people who are impacted by the decisions you make are not there, it's not their fault. It's your fault. You have to change how you're meeting. You have to go to them, you have to bring them in some way, but people who are impacted by our decisions have to be part of the decision-making process. We need people to see themselves in the results. It's not enough to invite people in, it's not enough to get their opinion and then just go do what you want. Right? Invite people in early enough that they can actually impact what you're doing, and then show them how what they did resulted in what you're doing now.
We were involved in running the public engagements for the Halifax Central Library. The architect at the end of that process, and he's been building public buildings his entire career, said, for the first time in my career, the public became my client. First time in my career building public buildings, the public became my client. Right? People could see themselves in the results. They could see their fingerprints on that building.
So you need to share the necessary information with folks so that they can give you good information back to inform your results, right? There's something about this information sharing. We need to let people know enough to give us informed information. That architect, for example, came back and said, this is our budget, we can't do what you want to do.
Right, the first engagement session, he did all this massive engagement. Everybody was so inspired. And at the end of the session, Morton was just like terrified. He's like, I cannot build what they want for $55 million, right? And then he had to come back and revisit it.
Right, but he shared with them that information.
Yeah.
This is what I can do then.
Yeah.
With what you've given me,
That's right.
right? And so this goes right to being really clear. When you invite people in, as we're engaging people, we need to engage different people. We need to talk with them, give them enough information to help us. And we need to be clear on where decision making will lie and where the boundaries or parameters are. $55 million for that library was a parameter. It doesn't make sense to just pretend that it's pie in the sky and we have $300 million. We have $55 million, right? So be clear with people. What are the parameters? What can they change? What can they not change? And then who will make the decision? Time and time again, I've been with groups who actually don't have decision-making power, but you give them clear parameters, you tell them what they can influence, and they'll do magic for you.
Right, so we're moving from present and defend as a way of engaging people to involve and integrate. That's what we're doing. There's a fundamental shift. Present and defend doesn't work. We've already made our decision, and our engagement process is we're going to present it to them and try and convince them it was a good idea. It doesn't work. Right? Relationships as resolution. When you don't know what you're doing, when you're dealing with fundamental uncertainty and circumstances that are beyond your control, you can no longer trust the fact that your 18-month plan is going to work. You can't trust answers anymore because they're changing around you. So actually the thing you need to trust is the quality of relationships you have with the people you're working with, right? Because that's what you can rely on in circumstances that are highly uncertain and rapidly changing. If you aren't willing to build good relationships when you're trying to make significant change, you won't get results that last. It's as simple as that. It will fall to pieces around you. 20 years of experience of people who just want to get to the finish line but fail because they haven't built the quality of relationships that allow them to withstand the circumstances.
And sometimes we pretend relationships have to be built on agreement. That is not true. Our relationships often don't have to be built on agreement. Think about your family members. If we're in a relationship with them, we often don't agree. So making agreement a prerequisite to a relationship isn't the answer.
Right, we disagree all the time.
All the time.
Right.
Right now.
Right, so having a good strategy isn't sufficient. We can go design all the strategy we want. If we don't have a culture among us and between us where we actually want to get to the work, it doesn't last. So this attention to relationships as well as to outcome, as well as to process is incredibly important. All right? And then the last one here, I think this talks to me about, there was a CEO of a newspaper I worked with, and we were sitting down for coffee at one point, and we were kind of debriefing some of the work we were doing within the newspaper. And she kind of, at one point, she leant back and she said, "Oh, how I turn up is what I give permission for. How I turn up is what I give permission for." That's the bottom line in leadership. That's the bottom line in leading any kind of change. Telling everybody they need to be flexible, but being fundamentally inflexible doesn't work. Telling everybody they should be positive, but actually turning up cynical doesn't work. Right? How you turn up is what you give permission for. It's irrelevant what you're asking other people to do if you can't turn up and shift your own behaviors as a leader. The level of change you are going to be able to lead is directly relative to the level of change you're willing to go through inside yourself.
So change how you engage others, change how we engage each other, change how you engage yourself. That requires knowing yourself, right? That you have some way, a disciplined, rigorous practice of knowing who you are. And I know that sounds wild because we all think, well, I'm 45 years old. I know myself. I've been in this body 45 years. But often, we don't actually know how we show up. I will tell you that when people tell me they're laid back, I'm like, no, you're not. Like, laid back people never say they're laid back, right? They just don't, right? So people who say, like, I'm totally innovative, right, are often not our innovators, right? Like, that's not the case. And so know who you are. Have a practice for understanding how you show up and what that means about you and where you get triggered and where you're going to like people and where you're not. And also work with your beliefs. One of the things that we say a lot is, please don't believe what you think, right? Because what you think will shift and change. I want you all for just this moment, we only got 20 seconds, to think about a belief you used to have that you no longer have. An example might be, I cannot live without that person, right? Or I'll never take that job. Or I'll never work with that person. Our beliefs change all the time, so work with that. Don't get stuck on your beliefs are reality, right? They change all the time. Work with that.
Great. Build capacity. If you're looking where to start, build capacity, build your capacity and the capacity of the people around you to lead in the midst of uncertainty. We have all been trained that leaders are people who have the answers that can fix problems. That's not true anymore. Doesn't work. If you think you've got the answer in a circumstance that's information saturated, incredibly complex, increasingly uncertain, you're out to lunch, you're enormously stressed, right? Build your capacity and the capacity of the people around you to lead in the midst of increasing uncertainty. Focus on that. And don't think this isn't about changing the structure of our organizations.
That's right.
Right? If you keep wondering why we keep regressing, you need to start looking at the structures you have in place. You may be talking innovation, you may be building nice relationships among your people, but the very structure you're working in may be undermining your ability to do anything new. You have to start looking at who's on my board. How is my board meeting? How often are they meeting? Right? Who is in a leadership position? How are decisions being made? How is wealth distributed among the different budgets within? You need to start revisiting the structure that we work within if you want to start working in a different way. You know, we worked with a big organization and they ended up having all of their kind of principles of cooperation on screensavers for all of their staff. You know, and then they were like, we don't know why it's not getting traction. Right? Because you're just sending out a communications message.
That's right. And finally, Tim and I do this work because we do believe another world is coming and we want to be part of creating that. And so we share this quote with you because we actually know we're working with people every day who are building the future they want. And it doesn't serve any of us to be cynical or hard-nosed. There is a different future coming and we can get with it or we cannot. But we could get excited about it. We could begin to work with it. We could begin to move with it and we could be part of that future.
Brilliant. Which is not to say it's easy.
Nope.
No one said this was going to be easy.
Nope.
Right? But it's worth it. Right? The world does not need people who are looking for the easy option right now, who are stepping up into leadership. The world needs people who can look squarely at the face of reality, say, all right, even though I think my chances of success are very limited, I'm going to do it anyway, because it's the right thing to do, because this is my moment. Right? This is not the time to back down because things seem overwhelming. This is the time to find the courage inside of us to step up and lead. Forward movement, there's always a way. Thank you very much.